Hello and welcome back to Mate's Tottenham Blog and to another episode of Tottenham Hotspur Transfer Talk. Today we're going to be looking at Tottenham's 3 confirmed signings so far, who are of course Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg, Joe Hart and Matt Doherty. We're also going to be looking into a few more rumours and a few more links that are swirling around the place at the moment. One of them is the potential swap deal that we could see, that we have been talking about in the last couple of weeks, between Tanguy Ndombele and Milan Skriniar of Inter Milan. Also looking at our left-back position at the moment, with Ben Davies of course having signed a new contract last season, Danny Rose's future being a bit in doubt, and the Sergio Reguilon links. We're also going to be looking at Donny van de Beek, who we appear to have missed out on. That is with the question of whether or not we were ever in the market for him in the first place. Also looking at Min-Jae, South Korean defender for Beijing Guan, who we were linked with earlier in the window. It seems to have died down now. And also the Bournemouth trio of David Brooks, Callum Wilson and Josh King that Tottenham could be revisiting later in the transfer window. So before I get into the video, as always, if you are new to the channel and you do want to see more transfer videos like this, plus match previews, reviews, interactive live streams and general Tottenham analysis videos, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below and click the notification bell so you get notified whenever I upload. So to dive straight into things, the first signing we did confirm this window was Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg from Southampton. We signed him for £15 million and a 5-year deal running through until 2021 or 2025. Kyle Walker-Peters went in the opposite direction in what is being classed as a separate deal for about £12 million. So essentially, although it wasn't a swap deal, essentially we did sign Hojbjerg for Kyle Walker-Peters plus £3 million, which you have to look at as a very good deal. He's a first team player with Premier League experience, and as far as Kyle Walker-Peters goes, he wasn't a player who was in our first squad. He didn't look like he was going to be breaking into our first squad anytime soon. He has had chances, and although his appearances at times have been positive, they have been encouraging, it just didn't look like he was ever going to make that step up to being a regular first team player. And also he did spend the second half of last season on loan at Southampton, so it's not the biggest loss. I think it's a very good way to reduce that transfer fee for Hojbjerg, and open up some more places in that squad. The only, I suppose I wouldn't even call it a negative side, but something we do need to be wary of is losing Kyle Walker-Peters and bringing in Hojbjerg. We are one player less now, one player further away from reaching that homegrown quota for the season. But Hojbjerg, I think, is a fantastic signing, a player with Premier League experience who has shown in the Premier League that he is one of the best midfielders in there. Looking at the numbers and the stats, a quick quote from him in his first interview with Tottenham, he said, "What was very important for me was that I wanted to play at a club where I could see myself for many years, and Tottenham was just the one." So this isn't by any means a stepping stone in Hojbjerg's career. It is a move that he thinks is the best one for his career, and one that perhaps he can go on and win trophies with. So looking at the stats, now I want to say as well, I'm not going to be focusing too much on the stats in this summer's Transfer Talk series, because we did it a lot last year, looking at our signings of Tanguy Ndombele and Giovanni Lo Celso especially. We really looked in at those stats, we focused on those stats, and although they were positive and they are things that do need to be acknowledged and do need to be recognised, I think it's much more important to look at stats when you are focused on players who are already playing in the Premier League. With Tanguy Ndombele coming from France, Giovanni Lo Celso, we bought him from Spain, he also had experience in Ligue 1. I don't think it's the most positive thing, the most beneficial thing, I suppose, to be looking at those stats and those numbers like that. But with our signings like Hojbjerg and Doherty, because it is in the Premier League, it's a lot more important looking at those. So for these players, I will be talking a lot about some of their stats, but as a general note, I suppose, for this summer series, I won't be doing that too much for the players coming in from Europe, because we saw with Ndombele and Lo Celso last year, they looked like fantastic signings that could really push us on to the next level, given that at the time the level we were currently at was just losing a Champions League final. But of course a lot has changed at the club in the last year, and Ndombele certainly hasn't become the player we wanted him to be, even though injuries did play a big part in that. And Lo Celso, it took a while for him to get to the level we were expecting, and even then he did fade away sort of after the Premier League return. But looking at Hojbjerg, playing with Southampton last year, a team who up until October, November were prime relegation candidates, even up to that 9-0 defeat to Leicester. But it was at that stage where they did turn things around, throw out some crazy numbers in the remainder of the season in terms of points picked up, and just towards that end of the season they were kind of in the upper half of the table, for the form table, for quite a while of that, and they ended up steering well clear of relegation. Hojbjerg, a massive part of that success for them. And these stats as well do paint a different picture of Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg, of what I would have thought he was as a player. He's someone who is really seen as a defensive midfielder, a holding deep line midfielder. But I think going through these numbers, he is a lot more progressive and more of a transitional player. Even looking at the way he's played in our pre-season games so far, he is more progressive than a lot of people do think. But having said that, he is he's very good at breaking up the play and winning possession back, as you would expect a defensive midfielder to do. But he had the most ball recoveries in the Premier League last season with 326. He had gained possession most times in the midfield third in the Premier League last season as well, with 181. And a stat that really stood out to me is he gained possession the 7th most times in the attacking third of the Premier League last season with 28. And for any midfielder position, maybe excluding attacking midfielders or forward wingers, I think for someone who is more defensive than attacking as a midfielder, it's very impressive that he did have such a high number of ball recoveries in the attacking third. And it's not something you often see. Like, if you want to look at, I suppose, the best holding midfielders, best defensive midfielders, and I know I'm saying Hojbjerg isn't exactly that, but if you're comparing players like Yaya Toure, Fernandinho, even Moussa Dembele, you won't find those numbers of gaining possession in the attacking third. And that high press, that intensity that we get from Hojbjerg is something that will fit straight into our team, and something I think we can really reap the benefits of. So he definitely is more of a progressive transitioning player. Looking at his passes as well, he's the 11th most attacking third passes attempted in the Premier League last season with 289. Now that does affect his pass completion rate quite a bit. It's down at 77%, which isn't ideal, but it's because of those forward passes. I'm sure if you took those almost 300 passes out of the equation, his numbers would be in the high 90s probably, because it is those forward thinking passes that are often cut out more than anything else. And when they're going to have players like Dele Alli, Heung-min Son, Lucas Moura, Stephen Bergwijn making the movement that they do in behind the striker, I think there's going to be a lot more opportunities for Hojbjerg to pick out those passes in the league this season. But as I was saying, the most important thing that we can take from signing someone like Hojbjerg is the fact that he has the Premier League experience. He's made 109 appearances in the Premier League for Southampton, and he is still only 25, so there is a lot of time for him to push on and develop and become even a better Premier League player. If we're looking at his stats per 90 in the Premier League last season, we've tackles attempted 2.64, tackles won 1.61, ball recoveries 10.59, and interceptions 1.54. Comparing those quickly to Tanguy Ndombele, tackles go from 2.64 for Hojbjerg down to 1.1 tackles per game for Ndombele, and interceptions, as I said, 1.54 for Hojbjerg down to 0.7 for Ndombele. So much more effective player in there with breaking up the play, but he also has those numbers for getting the ball forward, moving the ball forward, and creating attacks, which is what we need. Is what we thought we were getting with Ndombele last season. That didn't quite come to fruition. Sissoko has, I suppose, improved season on season with Tottenham. He's been playing a more attacking role at times this season, excluding those few appearances in right back. And Harry Winks, a player who continues to split opinion among the fan base, but one who I do think is a similar type of player there. But where Hojbjerg is going to be playing, I was really intrigued to see where Mourinho was putting him in the pre-season games. I think I wouldn't say the most obvious, but the most influential position that he did play in some of these games, when he was kind of sitting in front of Harvey White in the midfield. Harvey White, who I think performed really well throughout the pre-season, but there was a few times there when you could see Hojbjerg kind of sitting in front of him, and as I was saying, not being that traditional defensive midfielder that perhaps a lot of fans, including myself, were expecting to see from him at the club. But he was sitting in front of Harvey White and kind of conducting the play from there, rather than being your straight up breaking the play up from that holding midfield position. And just quickly before we move on to the next player, there's a quote here from Marty Perarnau, if that's how you pronounce it, from his book Pep Confidential, when he, of course, writes about Pep Guardiola. And Hojbjerg played under Pep at Bayern Munich, and this quote is, "Pep had heard good things about Hojbjerg before coming to Bayern, and it has taken just a couple of training sessions for him to fall in love with the player. Pep thinks he may have just found the Sergio Busquets of Bayern." So some really, really high praise from perhaps one of the best managers in the world, Pep Guardiola there, a massive fan of Hojbjerg, which really bodes well for what we might see from him in the coming years in a Tottenham jersey. Now, another player who I think kind of ticks a lot of the same boxes as Hojbjerg does as a signing is, of course, Matt Doherty, who he also signed for £15 million on a deal until 2024 from Wolves. It's looking potentially like he will be a replacement for Sergio Reguilon, who's attracting a lot of interest at the moment from AC Milan, Bayer Leverkusen, and there's another team being thrown around there. I think it's Monaco, but I'm not entirely sure. AC Milan, this was the latest on their potential move for Sergio Aurier, so they are in talks with Tottenham, according to Fabrizio Romano. There's talk of Milan making a €50 million bid, but Tottenham holding out for closer to 20 million. So I'm sure we'll see a few developments in that in the coming weeks. But as for Matt Doherty, I think it's an absolute bargain signing a player like him for £15 million, potentially potentially the best value deal we could have gotten for a right back in the current market. The names that are being thrown around earlier in the window were Zeki Celik and Timothy Castagna, players who just don't have that Premier League experience but probably would have attracted higher transfer fees than what we did end up paying for Doherty. Looking quickly into these stats, he played 36 out of 38 Premier League games for Wolves last season, scoring 4 times, assisting 3 and contributing to 12 clean sheets. But as for those goals, a few of them came in some very, very big moments. He scored in 3-2 wins against Manchester City and Tottenham, so he's a big game player. He provides when he needs to, and that could be massive for us in these games against like top 6 sides and things like that. He's going to be a very good addition to our team. I'm just taking a quick excerpt here from an article I wrote last month, I'll link down in the description below, about Matt Doherty. Doherty was a crucial part of the Wolves team who often looked to overwhelm teams down their right-hand side. Although the onus was primarily on the powerful Adama Traore, Doherty's attacking threat and defensive nous helped majorly. Almost half of Wolves' attacks came down the right-hand side last season, coming up at 42% with that. Doherty made 55 successful tackles this season, the joint 6th highest in Nuno Espirito Santo's team. He won the most aerial battles of all his teammates with 133. His 47 clearances and 40 interceptions have him 5th in the club's leaderboards in both areas. The wingback's good form didn't just start this season. He registered 4 goals and 5 assists in the Premier League in the previous season. He scored 15 goals and managed 15 assists in all competitions across the 2018-19 and 2019-20 seasons. Trent Alexander-Arnold is the only defender with more goal contributions during that time frame. So incredible that there is a player like Doherty. I wouldn't say he's gone under the radar, but I don't think he's received the praise that he does deserve for the effect he's had on that Wolves team. Only Alexander-Arnold with more goal contributions than him over the last 2 seasons is massive. It really is, because Alexander-Arnold probably going forward has been the best fullback in the world in the last couple of years. I think a lot of people would have thought Andy Robertson would be second to him with all those stats, but it is Matt Doherty. Again, Premier League experience is massive. He's 2 seasons under his belt now in the Premier League with Wolves, a team who have played really good football. They've really overachieved in comparison to what people were expecting of them when they got promoted. Mourinho even himself has recently said he hated coming up against Matt Doherty. I think we've seen from the first few episodes as well of the All or Nothing documentary, he was someone he really focused on when we were coming up against Wolves as a threat both going forward and as a defensive player. Doherty just seems to fit our style absolutely perfectly. Looking at what we were doing with our defence last season, kind of started with that 4-2 home victory against Olympiacos. Again, as we see in the documentary, I think we kind of get an insight from Mourinho into it, the way we play that with that back four, kind of a bit unbalanced, with Sergio Reguilon pushing on really far down that right hand side, and our left back on the day with Danny Rose sort of sitting in as a third centre back. It was something that was a lot more, I suppose, suited to Ben Davies. He'd probably be more defensive than Danny Rose would be, and a bit taller as well for those high balls that you would need to deal with as a centre back. Matt Doherty playing in traditionally a 3-4-3 or a 3-5-2 at Wolves. He does play that right wing back role. He's a wing back more than a full back, although he has said himself he can play in a flat 4 or in a 3/5, going down that attacking route as a wing back. He just fits that bill perfectly, and I think when the links first started coming about, I think it was Alistair Gold said the interest is there, the talks are ongoing, but it's a deal that will be really hard to complete. And I think it's exceptional that we have managed to get that deal done so quickly. It's testament, I suppose, to Daniel Levy and the work he's putting into this transfer window. For the first time in a while, we're seeing a number of deals getting done early. Last season it wasn't Ndombele and Jack Clark that we got done straight away, but then we had to wait until deadline day before we got in Lo Celso and Sessegnon. 2 deals that really seemed like they were imminent for a number of weeks, but just dragged out till deadline day. But Levy not making the same mistakes this year, getting 3 deals done very early on, and potentially another few coming in the next few weeks. The third signing that we have made, not one I'm going to talk about as much because he's not someone who's going to be in a starting 11 as much, and it's of course Joe Hart. He said it himself in his first interview. I think it was a minute and a half long, and he referenced 3 times that he's not really going to be a first team player. He's more of an influencer in the dressing room. He's someone on the training ground that can help out, and he can be a leader. He is a winner. He's a leader. I saw some quotes in recent weeks from Kevin De Bruyne and Vincent Kompany talking about just how big a part Joe Hart played in City becoming the team that they are, the club that they are today. He's a born leader. He knows how to win. He's won, I think, 2 Premier League titles with City and a number of domestic trophies as well. I think he's a great addition to the squad, not exactly the team or the starting 11, but he's a great squad player, and he is an international level goalkeeper who is now probably our third choice. I do think Paulo Gazzaniga will still be ahead of him in that regard, but he really is a great player to have in the squad. Now moving on to a few more of these rumours and links rather than concrete deals that have already been done, and the first one we're going to look at is Tanguy Ndombele and Milan Skriniar. I think it was Fabrizio Romano earlier on in the window was talking about the offer Inter Milan made to Tottenham, which was a straight swap deal, Skriniar for Ndombele, which Tottenham of course turned down. Now this is one that at the start I was a bit disappointed to see Tottenham say no to this, because Ndombele was a player who's come in, a lot of hype surrounding him, a club record transfer fee. All the signs were good. They were pointing to a very positive, good addition to our team, perhaps even a replacement for Moussa Dembele, but it just hasn't happened for him. And if it was the case of performances being a bit lacklustre and maybe him struggling to adapt to the Premier League, you could perhaps forgive him a bit, but it does seem to be an attitude issue, and there has been friction there between him and Jose Mourinho already. So I thought, having lost Jan Vertonghen, who of course left on the free transfer and has since joined Benfica, I thought it would be a great opportunity to bring in Milan Skriniar, who is probably not known as much as some other centre-backs are, but I would put him up there as a world-class defender. One who has attracted interest from a number of top European teams throughout his career, of course Inter Milan being one of them. I thought it was a deal that we should have gone for, but I suppose looking back on it now, I think Ndombele still has the chance to develop. He still has the chance to turn this around. He's only 23. There's potential there, and perhaps it would be a bit stupid to kind of pack it in after one season and say he had his chance, he's thrown it away, let's just get rid of him. I think ideally a situation where we could have Ndombele and also sign Skriniar would be perfect, but I don't know if the money's going to be there for that this window, especially looking at the way Tottenham are going about their business. It seems to be these kind of small clever signings rather than marquee signings, which I do prefer, and I do think it's going to have more of an effect, especially with someone like Jose Mourinho as manager. That Ndombele Skriniar one I do think is one that will be revisited later on in this transfer window. Inter Milan, at the time those initial negotiations were on, at the time the bid was rejected, I think they'd said they will come back to this after the Europa League final, which they of course lost a little over a week and a half ago. So it'll be interesting to see if they do come back in with that one, but I don't think it's the end of the rumours and the links and the bids for Tanguy Ndombele this summer. As far as left back goes, Danny Rose, his future, as has been the case for a couple of years now, is really up in the air. Of course, spent the second half of last season on loan at Newcastle and spoke very fondly of his time there, not just with the club but also in the area. Somewhere, of course, he grew up. Whether or not he'll be coming back, I think from what we've heard from him, it seemed to have been a case for a number of years now. He's going to see out his contract. If he's going to play, he's going to play. If he's not, he's not. And it's just down to the manager. I think there was some talks of Pochettino there just before he was sacked as to whether or not Danny Rose would be a first team player. I think even last summer he almost ended up at Watford on deadline day. So it's just hard to tell what's going to go on there. The latest that he said is he'd love to play for Tottenham one more time. With the year left in his contract, it could be a case of him being a squad player this season and moving on for free then. A potential left back incoming, one that Alistair Gold has been talking about in the last couple of days, is Sergio Reguilon, a left back for Real Madrid, who spent last season on loan at Sevilla. His name really has been thrown around for a lot of teams potentially signing him. I think Chelsea were looking at him before they eventually settled on Ben Chilwell, and Leicester as well, looking at a number of fullbacks there, in talks now with Timothy Castagna, also been linked with Robin Gosens from Atlanta as well, and Nicolas Tagliafico from Ajax. I think Sergio Reguilon is someone who will be on their list as well, given the fact that Real Madrid are looking to sell. I think if this is a deal that has potential to be completed, I think it's one that Tottenham should go for. I can't imagine the transfer fee is going to be too high, but probably only if Danny Rose leaves the club on a permanent deal this summer is when we could potentially see something for Reguilon come to fruition. But if it is a case of having Davis and Rose here, I don't think there'd be any point in even entertaining the idea of getting that deal done. Moving on to Donny van de Beek, he does look to be joining Manchester United this week. United have had a bid accepted of about £40 million with add-ons, as we know United love to do. According to Sky Sports, Donny van de Beek will be having his medical there on Thursday. The question, I suppose, does remain, were Tottenham ever in the market for him? Because as always there were rumours, there were links, we were linked to him last summer as well. But I don't think it was one that we were looking into this summer. Again, going back to the type of deal that we seem to be doing, it's Premier League players, I wouldn't say on cheap deals, but kind of cut price deals for Premier League players. Van de Beek, we knew it was going to take 30, 40, 50 million pounds to get him to the club. There might have been some inquiries there from Tottenham, but I don't think it was one that was ever seriously entertained. And while, of course, the Daniel Levy haters and those who believe everything they read in the media will say we missed out on him, it may well be a case of the fact that we just weren't interested enough in him to put up a fight against United in their negotiations. Min-Jae, as I mentioned, a South Korean centre-back from currently plays at Beijing Guan in the Chinese Super League. This is one that was been spoken about a lot more earlier on in the window. He's a very good centre-back. Watching the Chinese Super League this season, he's powerful, he's commanding, he's good in the air, he's good with the ball at his feet, his tackles seem to be immaculate at times. Of course, a very different thing playing in the Chinese Super League and in the Premier League. This one just really seems to have died down. It wouldn't be too expensive if we were going to sign him. I think £15 million was the price tag being quoted when we were linked with him. It's one that, look, I think it would be a good deal if we did get it done. He's a young player with potential and does seem to have a lot of quality. But if we didn't get him, it wouldn't be the end of the world, because it's not a big problem position in the team. It's one that maybe we should address, but it's not the end of the world if we don't get in a centre back, especially if he's our number one target. Now the final one, moving on to Josh King, Callum Wilson and David Brooks. Of course, all three relegated with Bournemouth this season. The only reliable, I suppose, news that we're getting on this is that Sky Sports said towards the end of last month we are interested in Callum Wilson. They're three players who, I suppose they'd be the same as Min-Jae. It would be great if we got him in, but it wouldn't be the end of the world if we didn't. But as far as these deals go, I think it's something that will be revisited in the last 10 days or so of the transfer window, because as we know, after the main transfer window closes, there is a period of time there of about 10 days where Premier League clubs can do business with EFL clubs. And I think that's when you'll see the likes of Bournemouth, Watford and Norwich being raided. A lot of top quality players gone down there. I know Bournemouth have already lost Aaron Ramsdale to Sheffield United, but they also have, of course, King, Wilson, Brooks, Jefferson, Lerma's in there as well. Nathan Ake gone already. Watford with Doucouré, Capoue, Ismaila Sarr, Troy Deeney. A lot of good players there in Norwich as well, with a few Max Aarons, Godfrey and Pookie as well. I think we could see a lot of movement from those clubs towards the end of that EFL transfer window, I think, which closes on the 15th of October. So it's been a busy window for Tottenham already. 3 signings in, with the start of the league still 2 weeks away. But it's certainly not the end of the business we have seen from Spurs. There'll be a number of signings, and I also think a number of outgoings over the next just under 2 months. It'll be interesting to see who we do manage to get in and who hasn't made it into Mourinho's squad for this season. Put down in the comments below what you think of our signings so far and what players you think could be either joining or leaving Tottenham in the coming weeks. If you have enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, thanks for watching.